I'm Kanan Chandran, the publisher of StormAsia.com. Welcome to today's web chat, Seeking Wellness in Times of War. Now, the web chat is a regular series of webinars which we organize, StormAsia.com organizes, and which brings together different views and thoughts on a variety of issues. Now, today we are fighting wars on several fronts. The big ones we have little control over, have been raging since time immemorial. There are close to 50 active armed conflicts taking place globally. And these will not abate as long as greed for power and bullying for dominance are part of the apex predator mindset. But we are in wars on other fronts too. Technology is constantly pushing itself on humans, forcing people to adapt. The internet seemed like a good idea. It still is, but very soon its effects on society became quickly evident. The negative aspects of the internet. It's changed behavior, especially when it got into smartphones, which we can't seem to be able to get rid of. AI poses fresh dual-edged opportunities, more efficiency, greater laziness. The dark web poses its own challenges on individuals, businesses, and countries. It's estimated to generate $1.5 trillion annually, and that's just a modest estimate. We are fighting nature as well. Climate change is affecting our interactions with the planet, how we live, how we move, how we work, how we operate. So raising a family these days is much more complex. You have to juggle providing for the family, being good members of the community, you have to manage rising costs, you have to maintain your mental health, and much more. Now, with all these wars raging, how then do you balance your life with regular doses of wellness? We seek advice from our panelists today who come from different industries. It's hard not to know who Jeremy Monteiro is. Singapore's King of Swing has been building up the jazz scene here and abroad as a musician, educator, and author. He's the executive director and music director of the Jazz Association Singapore, helping young talent build up their profile, sharpen their skills, and eventually find a role in the music industry. Dr. Sebastian Liew is the first medical herbalist in Singapore and a doctor of naturopathy. After graduating with a diploma in engineering, he joined the workforce but found it very depressing being in that state where you have to fight for everything. He went searching for holistic therapies and decided to pursue a full-time career in natural medicine. And from Tasmania in Australia, Meli is the principal of People at Their Best, a boutique consultancy. Dom is responsible for leading his company's culture, engagement, customer experience, and leadership programs. Dom has held senior human resource and industrial relations positions within the public and corporate sectors for organizations in Australia. Welcome everybody to today's session. Now let's kick things off with a general question, starting with Dom. Are we living in unprecedented times?
Yes, that's the short answer. For most of our evolution, it was relatively stable, and the brain had an opportunity to adapt. And I think the real challenge now is that the brain perceives uncertainty as a threat. And when it perceives a threat, the thinking, rational part of the brain shuts down. And that's, I think, what defines the times that we're in now, a time of heightened uncertainty and unpredictability, a very volatile time of change. It's not the change that represents the problem, it's the lack of certainty. So it's very unclear what action we should take because there's no guarantee or reliability in terms of the outcome that you'll get. And that's quite a unique time that we find ourselves in, and we're not really built to cope with that.
I
Yes.
guess every generation has its challenges. I mean, I was born in the 60s and I remember those days. But in those days, we don't have social media, and there's a sort of, in my opinion, there's a sort of balance between work and school, and family. But now with all this overload of information, because I only realize it after I see patients, because I've seen more young people having anxiety issues coming to me. And sometimes I also judge, say, why you, so much anxiety, because you are better fed than my generation. We had to struggle like crazy. We came from poor family and so on. But then there's overload of information, and of course there's a lot of things going on in the world that make this place seems to be not safe. Like in the olden days, my parents were, even though I live in a town in Singapore where it's not supposed to be safe, they freely let me play outside, things like that alone. But nowadays, you don't see parents doing that, even though our security is so high, right, in Singapore. So definitely, it give us, especially the younger generation, a kind of impression that the world is not safe. And so this will build up anxiety, and plus our school system here is really very stressed. I can say that because I have teachers clients, but I also have student clients, so I can compare both of them. Maybe in
Mm.
those days we also have a lot of chaos. It's possible as well. My parents went through the World War and so on. I'm sure there are also a lot of uncertainty.
The magnification of the troubles we are going through in the world is very prevalent because of social media and also television, and before that radio, right? So if you look back 500 years ago, I mean, our brains are actually not designed to know about every single thing happening into the entire world. Our brains actually are designed to be more local, so our own village and our neighboring villages, and that's about it. What we hear from that. But now we are overloaded with, we know what's happening in little villages, the big cities, and so on. So it's a bit of information overload. It's not that we should be indifferent now that we have the knowledge of such sufferings around the world. Like, for example, when we get to see a World Health Organization appeal for, or World Food Program appeal for food, that's useful to know that we can help in our own way. But at the same time, I'm actually now cutting down on how much news I watch. I don't watch at the news CNN on the hour anymore. I even canceled my news channels. I only catch
Yeah,
snippets
yeah, yeah.
from YouTube. So I'll see a CNN thing that's interesting. I'll watch just that. And then I think that the because I don't no longer have an overload of news, still get all the information I need. It always comes to me. People will talk about things, but I find that my life is more peaceful. My mental state is more peaceful.
Jeremy, you talk about having a local brain, sort of. Being fed all this information, does it lead to a condition where we are predisposed towards being unhappy rather than happy?
Yes, I think that we are exposed to the algorithm of the various platforms that we use, and if you tend to seek out interesting and inspiring things, then the algorithm will feed you more interesting and inspiring things. If you keep on looking at very negative things on the internet, then the algorithm is going to feed you more, and then it's just completely turns you, it can affect you and make you more negative. So I think it's important to balance. It's good to hear what the other side of your opinion thinks, so that you're able to then intelligently see whether someone has a valid opposite point of view. But at the same time, it's good to feed yourself good things. And the way you do that is actually teach your algorithm. Also, when we have our phones near us, they listen to us, right? They listen to what we are talking about. Like if I was looking at wondering, yeah, I have never been to Tahiti. I wonder what that's like. Next thing you know, all the ads for Tahiti keep coming up. So similarly, when we have our friends around us, when we talk about things, yeah, we need to talk and address disasters that are happening in the world, unhappiness and so on. But if we balance that out with interesting things, then the algorithm will feed us We are
Yes.
really subject to this so-called algorithm or algorithms.
I don't use Google. I use DuckDuckGo and it doesn't listen. So I did notice when I was near somebody who was using Google, what we discussed came up on their feed and not on mine. So
Right.
you can manage it. There are ways to control your settings so that you're not being listened to all the time.
There's an old maxim in well-being, which is that if you compare, you despair. And the algorithm, as you say, Jeremy, is set up to have us continually compare ourselves to other people's lives and what they post. And there's no doubt in the world, I mean, lots of studies out of Sydney University that time spent on social media is actually causal of depression, not correlated, but causal. It predicts depression. So it's part of what we were talking about earlier, that you have to take responsibility to what you expose your brain to, and that you have to be very conscious about what you actually give attention to. Because if you don't regulate, particularly your digital world, it will lead to depression. It will lead to lower well-being, unequivocally. The other thing is that we're actually not built for happiness. We are not hardwired to achieve happiness. It has to be a series of conscious choices that you make. In fact, the opposite, the brain's hardwired to look for threats, which make us miserable. And so we give attention to what might kill us, what might harm us. And we've evolved through past that time where there was a whole lot of physical and environmental threats. But our brain is still scanning the environment for those threats, and that leads to misery. So we have to be very conscious. We're not hardwired for happiness. We have to make deliberate choices to go after it. And there's a whole bunch of things that we can do. And one of them is regulating our digital world.
Yeah. And most of the time we numb ourselves. So because if you look at if you take the MRT in Singapore, and I think 99% of people, they are looking at a phone. So initially I was very curious what they are looking at, because sometimes maybe you want to catch up with a lecture or something like that. I think that's fine. But most people actually use the phone to look at the phone, and then nothing wrong with that. But the thing is that they are just browsing through, or maybe just playing games and things like that. And in my opinion, is many of us, and myself included also, many times we numb ourselves because we have a lot of stress. So the only way is to either fight, flight, or we freeze ourselves. And most people actually numb themselves
Yeah.
by using the handphone and getting very busy and so on, yeah. So we don't have time to reflect, to have clarity of mind, to make choices, to look at what is the purpose of life, and these are the things that very important to build resilience, and that is one of the very key thing towards peace, in the very chaotic world, is resilience, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people are also complaining that they don't have enough time um,
Yeah.
to find this balance. But as you said, Sebastian, on the train, everybody's doom scrolling and
Yeah. Yeah.
or playing games. Do you think time management is an issue? I mean, maybe that should be something people should look at, reflect upon how they manage their own time and see how best to find pockets where you can do certain things.
Mm.
Is the idea of a habitual pattern or a rhythm a good thing?
I call it
Would you?
regulation. Actually, it's in my seven terrain that I wrote in my book. The right condition for the body to be well, in a sense, as best as we can, is regulation. Most of us here, we don't have much regulation. Maybe we rush out for breakfast, and then after that we work, and then after that we come back home, and then after that we don't even rest. After that we continue with the handphone and work and so on, and most of them, they don't sleep. One of the questions I ask in any consultation in my practice, I say, what time do you sleep? And I tell you, many of them, they sleep at midnight or very late night, and then next morning they have to go to work again. And we know that if you sleep very late night, it's not very good for your body, because the body actually regenerates itself between 10 to 2, right? So it's not surprising we see more diseases actually. Yeah, so the regulation part and when to rest is traditionally they call it pray and work, right? Or you can say play and work, There's not this balance. Yeah. And I come back to the same question that we numb ourselves because we don't process our emotion. Maybe we are not really happy, but we don't know how to process it. We don't know how to go into the deeper level. So we numb it by busy with the phone, right from the very first thing in the morning to the evening, We don't want to look at the pain and the wound we have actually, in the office or in the family and so on. So yeah, so I think the first thing is to really feel the pain and don't numb yourself, and rather than numbing yourself, process it through whatever technique, whatever therapy you're going through, and so on. Yeah.
Okay, good point. Dom, just picking up on what Sebastian just said, to feel the pain. Is that something that you've taken into consideration? And what have you done to resolve it?
Look, there's about 20 things I'd like to say as a result of what Sebastian said. And the first thing that came to mind was actually thinking of Jeremy. One of the things that most people don't know is that the brain's favorite thing is music. And so if we look at some of those scans that I think you were talking about, Sebastian, it lights up. More neurons are activated when experiencing music than any other activity.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's one of the ways that we can help ourselves.
Yes.
The brain experiences more joy through listening to music than just about anything else. But
Yes.
directly to your point, Canon, to what Sebastian was saying, there's another shortcoming in our physiology, which is that we have an automatic stress response. So when we experience threat, uh, disease, all the things that we've been talking about, the body knows what to do and releases adrenaline and cortisol, blood pressure gets elevated, our respiratory rate gets elevated, our heartbeat goes up. And that allows the fight or flight or freeze response that Sebastian was talking about. The shortcoming is that we have no automatic relaxation response. So we've got an automatic stress response. We don't have to think about it. It happens automatically when the brain perceives a threat. But we have to consciously take control of relaxation, which allows us to then make the better choices that Sebastian's talking about. And one of the things you said, Sebastian, was we always had difficulties in the past. But the interesting thing is there that a lot of well-being metrics actually go up in times of conflict. So what matters is what our response is when we're experiencing, whether it's those global ones that you talked about, Canon, or whether it's the ones closer to home. It's our response that governs how we feel much more. I mean, Viktor Frankl, the famous resilience, and that's probably the first thing everyone should do. If you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, that's where you'd start if you want to feel better. But I mean, as a survivor of concentration camp, he said that, what was it? Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by a lack of meaning and purpose. And that's the crisis in the world at the moment, that we don't have a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning in our lives. And that's the unbearable part of it, not the circumstances. And unfortunately, most of us have very maladaptive responses to our circumstances. What I mean by that is we do things that don't actually serve us. We do things that don't help us. So it's making conscious choices, providing yourself with the space so that you can make choices that actually are helpful, that are functional, that make us experience greater peace of mind, rather than what most of us do, which is what we've been talking about, which is make choices which only exacerbate the sense of dis-ease and sense of not feeling in control, and the sense of helplessness that we experience.
What have you given up to attain well-being, Dom?
Lots of things that I used to choose, I now, so definitely around digital regulation, definitely around diet, and how I spend my time. Because look, if it was up to what comes naturally, I think we'd all just be sitting on our phones, sitting on the sofa in front of a screen and eating rubbish that doesn't serve our body. I think that's the normal response. So it's giving up all of those and making healthier choices. One of the key messages for me, nature favors evolution more than revolution. You don't have to change everything. It's about those micro choices, and it's about the habits that you were talking about before. And there's a principle that we should all think about, which is that it's called the tiny tweaks principle. That when you make micro changes, little improvements, but infuse them with your values, the things that you most care about, then that has real transformative power. So for me, it's about giving up a whole lot of choices that weren't helpful and making far better choices. But it's about making them habits, things that you can do every single day. You don't have to change your whole lifestyle, but you have to do little things each day, which make you 1% better each day. And then they stack up. And then over time, your life improves markedly.
Yeah, okay. Jeremy, what do you think of that? Have you been making incremental changes in your life?
Well, yes, and I mean, music. You're right. Just to pick up on from what Tom said, music is actually it's one of the best medicines around. And not only listening to music, but practicing music, playing music as a hobby, even if not as a profession. I mean, if you take it as a hobby and if you practice diligently, you will get a dose of what is also known as, in the abbreviation of dose, which is your dopamines, oxytocins, serotonin, and endorphins, as Sebastian will well know as a natural medicine doctor, which actually you don't have to actually take medicine to do that. There are drugs that can make you do that. But what this also helps is to bring down your level of your cortisol, which is the stress thing that makes you very stressful. It can prevent you from going to sleep. I mean, recently I had surgery about 6 months ago, and doctors even gave me some sleeping tablets, but they didn't work because my cortisol levels were so high that even the sleeping pills would not work. And so, besides this, I don't know whether Sebastian prescribes talks about ashwagandha, which is a 3,000-year-old Ayurvedic herb, and it's very good for that, as well as some other things are very good for naturally. If you don't want to learn the guitar or piano, another way is to take one of these natural uh, uh, cures, is as it were, for stress and so on and so forth.
Sebastian, what do you think of what Jeremy just said?
Oh yeah, wonderful. I'm so surprised you mentioned that. In my concept that I share teach to my clients is based on a concept called the seven terrain. So seven terrain, because our body is not just a physical body, right? It's a body, mind, and the soul. And we have to support our body as an ecosystem. It's not like now modern medicine. Well, of course, there's value in modern medicine. There's a specialty. You treat the liver, and then you go to the liver doctor, and then you go heart, and then you go to the heart doctor. But there's no connection. The body is a ecosystem, and so to actually help you to be free from anxiety, or even living a life of resilience, right? You need to support the whole ecosystem at the same time. And this has been I think have verified in not only me, but the countless therapists around the world, and I actually put it into seven thing, and I think Jeremy mentioned one of them is herbs, right? So it's HEALERS. It's called healers. So it's herbs, the environment. So the environment, like you listen to music, is really good. Music is a medicine by itself. In fact, the music in St. Hildegard medicine is a German medicine. She said that music actually affect the liver. Okay, in the medieval 12th century teaching. And then you have the HEA assimilation, that means your digestion, what you eat actually, whether it's digestible or not, right? A lot of times, and nowadays we talk about gut health and all this kind of thing, how the microbiome affect your mood, your anxiety, and so on. And then you have your L, that means the love. I mean, it's a very complex topic, but at least one very important thing that I see people improve is through uh, a meditation or a practice of gratitude. Really feel gratitude, not just say gratitude, not say, oh, thank you, not it's like that. You need to really feel it, and the person will cry actually sometimes, all right, when we do the exercise. So you build resilience to love, and one of those thing about love is gratitude. And then next one is E. So E is actually HEALE. So E is actually exercise. When we say exercise, it's movement. So stagnation is a form of, is the mother of all diseases. We call it stagnation. You don't move, your limb don't move. It doesn't mean you need to go to the gym, and work out. No, it doesn't mean that. And then the other part is HEALER. R is regulation. So in Chinese, they say, during the day is yang, that means you have activity, you work, activity. But the night is yin, you're supposed to rest, you're not supposed to have a lot of stimulation in the evening. So you need to live a life of balance. And then the last one is spirituality. Spirituality means it may not be associated with any religion, but to recognize, and this point is very important to me, and it's the ultimate thing, is that you need to recognize that you're more than the body. You're actually an eternal soul, and you will live, and all these things about fear is coming from the point that we don't recognize we have the true self in us. I mean, it's a very complex topic, but just be aware that you are more than just the physical body. All right, you're connected with this universe. I have seen how plant medicine help us to cope as well. So just now I talk about numbness, right? Numbness. I have seen people like they numb themselves, but when they take, let's say, one of the herb my favorite herb, and Jeremy mentioned about Vintania, which is ashwagandha, is good, but every herb has an energy, right? So ashwagandha is a heavy herb, so you can't take it by itself. You need something to be able to balance it, because it's a heavy herb. It can cause congestion if your digestion is not very good. Okay, nature has given us a lot of medicine that we are not aware of. We thought only man-made medication helps. Of course, they do have a role to play, but nature has given us. It's as simple as walk barefoot on the grass, doing grounding, doing earthing, which is environment, and it's free of charge anyway. So these are the things that I hope that people will learn, and they will help to build resilience for whether it's anxiety, peace, or maybe nowadays they talk about longevity, right? Or I don't really like to talk about longevity. We'll talk about healthy aging.
I just want to pick up on a comment here by Swiku about people having different body clocks and being more self-aware and working to your own cycle rather than just following a watch. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can say that, as you know, Kanan, I don't really respect the clock very much. Like the other day, I was writing and I was just in the flow and I didn't finish till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Then I just have to make sure that I sleep for 7 or 8 hours after that. When I play music, it's usually at night, so I'm very active. I'm not peaceful. It's not, I wouldn't say not peaceful, but I'm not resting because my performances are often at night. I read somewhere that the secret to a balance, a healthy life is the balance between motion and stillness. So I think if you have enough motion in your life, you need to balance it out with the appropriate amount of stillness, whether it be in a meditation practice. I think the Sebastian talking about having what is known as an attitude of gratitude is very important. And so yeah, and I agree. I agree with Swiku that we can define our own timetable and clock as long as we are cognizant of balancing our motion with our stillness.
I love
Okay.
that, Jeremy. That's great because movement is the key to health and longevity, or health and wellness, but balancing that out with the stillness, that's a lovely way to say it. Yeah, thank you. There's a really fundamental truth that the human brain cannot experience gratitude and anxiety at the same time. So the simplest thing that we can do, and of course, Sebastian, you're right, you have to be really feeling the gratitude, but there are gratitude practices, and we should all do them. The best one is probably the three blessings exercise, which you can Google that and find out how that works. But the brain cannot experience anxiety when it's experiencing gratitude. So the
Yeah.
best way to help yourself is to
Yes,
practice
yes,
gratitude.
exactly.
Another thing that we absolutely know is that givers gain, so giving, actually being helpful to others, helping others, actually improves our happiness. So these are the sorts of things, they're the conscious choices. Another one that was touched on is relationships and longevity. That's the number one factor determining our health into older aging is our relationships, and what particularly is referred to as micro connections. So how often do you have conversations with the people around you in your life, the people you buy your coffee from, the people that you encounter on public transport? Those micro connections are the most important factor for health in older aging. But there's just one other thing, and we've touched on exercise, and we've touched on mindfulness, and also breathing we should talk about as well. But one we haven't talked about, which is really important, is that the thing that's most closely correlated with happiness and also with success is actually work and effort. And I think the real problem is that everyone's chasing the outcome. Everyone's chasing, the bigger house or the car or whatever. The evidence is really clear. It's the work, it's the effort that you put in, the grit, the determination, which actually predicts happiness much more than the outcome itself. And so that's really should encourage us to actually worry more about how we spend our time and the work we're putting in, and not so much about the outcome of that time. Most people are going after the wrong things. Our world's organized in a way that's highly competitive and lots of competition, very individualistic, lots of consumption. There's the father of positive psychology, a man called Martin Seligman. He says something that's really important, which is the self. The self is a poor place from which to find meaning. So if the foundation for our happiness is meaning and purpose, most people are actually pursuing it in the wrong way, because the self is a very poor place from which to find meaning. So it's about cultivating something outside, bigger than ourselves, which is what Sebastian was saying. Whether it's relationships, whether it's your hobbies, whether it's giving to others and helping people, or whether it's giving to the community. The self, focusing on attaining things for yourself, is not a place where you're going to find happiness.
Okay. I just want to move this into an area that, Dom, you're in. You deal with organizations and the HR components and their. How about corporate well-being? How do you keep an organization in a happier state? I mean, when you're looking at all the technology that's coming and driving things and the fact that people are also losing jobs as a result of it. How can an organization strike a balance that is good for the business and the people and the customers?
It's surprisingly not difficult, but it is incredibly hard to get traction on the things that are required, which are all the things that we've been saying. Organizations inherently underinvest in the well-being of their workforces, which is a nonsense because we know that people experiencing greater well-being are far more productive, they're far more innovative, they're far more engaged, they collaborate more effectively, their customer service ratings go up, so their accidents go down. So the business case for investing in employee well-being is really sound, and yet we don't do it. Simply doing some of the things that have been discussed today, like helping people to cultivate their mindfulness, is incredibly effective because it's like going to the gym and exercising your brain. So the quality of our work is dependent on the quality of our concentration, and that is so diffused today. Our concentration is so diffused amongst all the things that you've been talking about, Cannon. So helping people to learn mindfulness increases their concentration, and then we get far greater productivity and far higher quality work. So it's really important. The other one that's very predictive of success is adaptability. As Charles Darwin said, it's not the smartest or it's not the biggest, it's not the strongest that flourish, it's those that are able to adapt more easily to their environment. And so we should be doing everything we can to cultivate adaptability in our own lives and in our workforces, but we don't give that any attention at all. And yet it's the characteristic which is most correlated with financial metrics is adaptability. And most people are not very adaptable despite all of the rhetoric around agility. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner a few years ago for economics, he's the one that proved this, that when we're faced with challenges, which is what we're talking about now, when we're faced with uncertainty, most of us will revert to familiar patterns of behavior, even when they're harmful to us. So when we need to be adaptable and agile, most of us revert to what we've done previously. And then we fool ourselves into thinking that we're being rational and logical because it feels so familiar. We're just doing the same thing. And that's what we've been talking about today with that distraction, the constant doom scrolling, just on this perpetual loop of looking at our phones and not being rested, not cultivating our relationships, and then feeling unwell and feeling helplessness. So we fall back on those unhelpful, maladaptive behaviors, and they don't serve us.
Just to wrap up the session, one question for each of the panelists. It's what's peace of mind to you, and what kind of a world do you want to leave behind? Jeremy, let's start with you.
Oh, well, earlier on we were talking about, I don't know who was talking about longevity, because, I think we are fast getting to a point where our lifespans will be extended substantially, and not just lifespan, but healthy lifespan. The only question I would worry is about whether or not, if I live to be 100, whether I have enough money to live at 100 years old. I think that's a big problem. But I think the important thing is to, like, people always ask me, what do you think your legacy is? And I always tell people, my legacy is not my business. It's for other people to say when I'm gone what my legacy is. And so, I guess we have to concentrate in the here and now, be present, fully present in whatever we're doing. Dom spoke about mindfulness. I'm a big fan of mindfulness, and some of the best books about that are written by the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh. So basically, to be here and now and and be kind and generous and work hard to try and make a change in the world, in what you do, whatever your vocation is. And then at the end of the day, you have to leave it to providence and leave it to the day after you're gone, to see whether or not you've done everything that you wanted to do.
My peace of mind comes when I don't seek for happiness. I actually seek meaning in life and my vocation, my calling. And I hope that younger generation will look at what is their real golden shadow and their real calling in their life. And in order to do that, you cannot numb yourself. I know there's a lot of pain, a lot of wounds, a lot of inner child hurts, and so on. But we shouldn't numb ourselves. We should go into inner work and process them and look for your calling. And when you have that calling, and I'm sure Jeremy's calling is music, and so you actually live a higher self, a true self kind of life, and you will be happy and resilient even in this midst of chaos and all the war around you.
I used to think that seeking peace of mind was indulgent. Now it seems to be the only thing that matters to me. But I think the trick, and this comes from the Stoics, of course, is that there's always going to be hardship and difficulty. And the Stoics would say that the peace of mind comes from separating the things that you can control and the things that you can't control, and knowing what you can't control, and taking responsibility for the things that you can do. And I think that's the trick for me. Well, the effort for me is, how do you want to behave in the face of all the things happening? How would you like to behave, and behaving how you would like others to behave towards us? So that's no guarantee that you're going to find peace of mind, but it's the only thing we can control. What's our response? Where do we put our attention? What do we do to help others? So it's called reciprocity of respect. If we want to behave in the way that we'd like others to behave towards us, and at least if you do that, you give yourself a chance of feeling that you're living a life that's worthy of our time. The great satirist, filmmaker Jodorowsky, who said that the point of life is to create for yourself a soul. And I think that's really it, that what are we doing to create a soul? And that should be where our efforts are.
Yeah. Well, yes, I think countries should take that approach as well. Might be a lot less strife in the world. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, I think. But today's session gave us some new things to look at, acronyms like DOSE and healers and the three blessings. But I think humans are resilient and will find a way to navigate challenging times and evolve and do things differently as need be. But it would be helpful to remain aware of the personal interactions that will help smoothen the journey or make it more interesting, and to also look at how you fit into the scheme of things while maintaining your sense of self as well. To the panelists, Professor Jeremy Monteiro, Dr. Sebastian Liew, and Dom Meli, thank you for all those wonderful insights and little bits and pieces of information, which I think are very helpful in helping us guide our own journeys in life. Thanks for the insightful comments, and to the audience, hope you had a good session. You enjoyed the session and take some things away. I wish everybody a balanced day and a balanced life ahead. Thank you.